Is that you, Remy, with the smiley face? 6B26, is that you, Remy? I'm so confused. I can't hear anything. Remy, can you change your name, please, in the chat? Okay, now we're live. I'm going to record this to the cloud, share the screen. All right, we're good. So you can see my screen now, and I have, amongst other things, Remy's part A and part B of a mock paper, Athens Education. God bless them. So thanks for coming. Okay, so let's take a look at part A. And I'll go through parts A and B and share some of my thoughts and comments and how perhaps I would mark this and how I would improve it. You're the chairperson of the school's eco-friendly club. You just organized the following activity. Eco-friendly club. Bottle collection day. Date, 21st to the 22nd of February. Help recycle plastic bottles. Drop them in the bin at the school gates. Okay. Before I continue, it's not clear what text type this is. What is this? What text type is this? It's the context for showing the activity in this way. So that's my first question is, what is this? Why not just continue the paragraph? Why is there some box here with this kind of unusual text type? That's Dr. Wu's first question. Let's continue. However, the activity did not receive much support from your schoolmates. Okay. My second question is, what does support mean? Did people clap their hands? Did people not put in an expected amount of plastic bottles? So that's not defined either. The club's teacher advisor has asked you to write a report on the event, the problems you observed, and your suggestions for improvement. Okay, so now I get the sense, one, the text type is a report. There should be a title and headings. There should be a formal approach. No need for you or I, write in the third person. We'll need details on the event, who, what, where, when, why. You might need to make up some events or some details of the event. Some problems, and I guess that's aspects of the absence of support. And I guess the problems are parts of the lack of support, and then suggestions for improvement. So before I even look at Remy's work, what I'm expecting are at least 3 sections describing the event, describing problems, describing solutions. If Remy's being very clever, there might be an introduction and there might be a conclusion. I could see having the opening alongside details of the event, and the conclusion being part of the recommendations. So ultimately, I expect 3 to 5 sections, but there definitely should be information about the event, information about the problems, and information about suggestions for improvement, perhaps in separate sections. Any questions? Okay, so let's actually take a look at how Remy organized her writing. Here we go. Oh, good. Nice. I like. Okay. So we do have a title. We do have a heading for the event. We do have a heading for problems. We do have a heading for solution. Okay. So I'm assuming there's just going to be one solution. If there are problems and there's a solution, I assume there's going to be just one solution as opposed to solutions. Okay. I'm going to write that down. I assume, oh, no, it's actually not what I want. Sorry about that. I want to annotate this using the PDF annotizer. So that's important. It seems like solution is singular. And now I want to be very careful here because suggestions for improvement are not the same as solution. Just, I'm going to throw it out there. All right, so where's the chat? Chat. Okay. Suggestions for improvement and solution are not the same. I'm going to annotate here. My expectation is one solution. Okay. Now, when I take a look at this report, I actually think it would be appropriate to provide an introduction here for the reader, because we see all of these headings without any context. So why does this report even exist? Why are you writing this? And it would be helpful to introduce the context for this report and its sections to the reader. So if you think about it this way, this is the introduction to the report. And it would be useful for the reader who picks it up, right? Because ultimately anyone can read this report. They wouldn't necessarily understand why you're writing the report and what's in the report. So that's just my suggestion, that you might want to introduce the context of the report and the headings, the contents of the report to the reader. So that anyone who reads the report would have a better understanding. So for instance, going back to the audience, club's teacher has asked you to write a report on the event. Ultimately, who's going to read this report? That's another question that will be unanswered, but you can answer it in your own head. Hi, Remy. So, Remy, who do you expect to read this report? And this is really important.
I think maybe the my teachers or principals.
Okay, so that's a great answer. The teachers or principals may read this report. Now, another question. Do you think the principal knows about every activity that happens in the school?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think the principal, okay, for example, do you think the principal of the school knows that we're having this lesson right now and what's happening?
Okay, no.
He probably doesn't know.
Yes.
He probably doesn't actually know much about the school. So if you were to give him a report, you were to give him this piece of paper, he probably wouldn't understand, one, why he has the report. Why do I have this piece of paper on my desk? And then he probably wouldn't have an expectation of what's in it. He knows it's a report, but what's actually in the report? That's why I make the suggestion that you might want to introduce the context of the report and the contents of the report to the reader, so that anyone who reads the report would have a better understanding. So for instance, next year, when there's a new chairman and maybe there's a new teacher advisor and there's a new principal, they would read the report and understand, wait a second, I might actually want to read this report. I might not just throw it in the rubbish bin. So that's just my suggestion, that you might want to have an opening paragraph similar to the contents in the prompt to introduce the report. Do you kind of get my thinking?
Yes.
Okay. Let me save that. And I'm not sure if you were here, but I had also wrote my expectations, one solution and suggestions for improvement and solution are not the same. So the prompt says write suggestions for improvement, and solution is a very strong word. Okay, suggestions are very different from a solution. Solution suggests one thing and a more definitive thing than suggestions. So the meaning of these words is a little different.
Okay.
Here we go. So, the event, our eco-friendly club, okay. So this is an issue with voice. And I'm not sure if you were here when I was previewing this prompt, because it's a report. My expectation is third person. I wouldn't expect I's and U's or we's. I wouldn't expect it. I would expect more formal and descriptive language. The issue with using our and we is one, who are we?
I thought I was represent the crop, so I write the way to represent our crop
Okay.
members. Yes.
So how do I know that the club is writing this report?
Maybe I should add a sentence in the first paragraph and say I am represent for the eco-friendly crop, or just changing our into the eco-friendly crop.
Okay. Yeah, I think you're on the right track. As I said earlier, because this should be a formal piece of writing, you might not want to use I's and U's. If you're writing on behalf of a club, just write in the introduction, this report was compiled by the Eco-Friendly Club. So you might want to use passive voice to emphasize the report and de-emphasize you, the author. It's important to mention the author, but ultimately the report isn't about you. It's about the event. Do you get what I mean? That right now, we don't know who we are. We don't know who wrote the report, and that will confuse the reader next year. It will confuse the principal this year, and it will confuse whoever reads the report next year. So that's why an introduction is important. And in the introduction, as you mentioned, you actually tell the person, like, who wrote this? So that's what we call, if you've ever been interested, that's what we call audience awareness. Right? So if you've ever been interested in the marking scheme, this is audience awareness. Do we even know, or do you even know who's reading this? And how who's reading this affects how you write and what you write. I'll say it one more time. So this is audience awareness. Based on your understanding of who will read this, do you include the appropriate information? So that affects the voice. Do you have any questions?
No.
So again, our expectation is the principals or teachers now or in the future will read this, and they need some context for this report, including why it exists and who wrote it. Okay, so you might want to report who compiled it, and so this would demonstrate audience awareness. So again, it affects the voice. Who are we? It's not clear who we are in this text.
Okay.
So our eco-friendly club held an event called Bottle Collection Day on the 21st and 22nd of February in our school. Okay. Our school. The objective of the event encourages students to help recycle plastic bottles in our schools. We also asked students to bring useless plastic bottles from their home. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the prompts and my expectations. So we need to write a report on the event. And we need details like who, what, who, what, where, when, why, and how. So there are a lot of opportunities to be creative. Going back to the marking scheme. So we just need a description of the event. And there might be opportunities, because not all the details are provided, to demonstrate creativity and imagination and the development of the ideas. So you want to develop the idea of this event, who, what, where, when, why, and that would be coherent with the text type. When you write a report, well, let's actually describe who, what, where, when, why, how. Okay. So as a matter of the organization of a text type, we would expect who, what, where, when, why in the event section, and we would expect these to be in the event section. Let's take a look. So we had an event called Bottle Collection Day. All right, what? On the 21st, 22nd February in our school. Okay, so we have a date. All right. Maybe you could be more specific and say when. All right, that's a detail. Was it time sensitive? That shows creativity and imagination. The objective of the event is to help encourage students to recycle plastic bottles in our schools. Okay, so we have a why. We also asked students to bring useless plastic bottles from their home. Okay, that's a how. Now, there are some important details that are missing from the event. And that includes where. Okay.
Oh.
And more how. So again, people actually need to know this. You know this, but the audience now and in the future will not know this. It will be gone. Everyone will have left the school. So it's actually important if they want to do this again and they want to improve is they have to be able to replicate it. Right, so I'll just add that. You might want to include details. You should describe where the event was held in the school and how students recycled bottles. And two other details. And what you did with the collected bottles. Okay. I mean, that might be useful to know too, right? So your club collected all these bottles. What did you actually do with them? And that takes creativity and imagination. We need to help people to replicate this. So, and what did you do with the collected bottles?
Maybe send photos to some recycle organization.
Yeah, great. So now you're getting it, right? And to think of that and to do that requires creativity and imagination, and it's appropriate. Now is the time to tell people, hey, this is what happened. We had these bins in the front of the school on these days, and students dropped plastic bottles in the bins. We had helpers at the bins the entire day. And after the event on the 23rd, we put all the things in a plastic bag and we sent them to the recycling center. Okay. Now I'm going to do a few language items. One, this should be an. Before, or an indefinite article before a word that begins with a vowel should use an event. And remember, it's our school. Okay.
Okay.
And useless is not the same as used. All right, so this is very important. Useless and used are not the same. Now, one final thing before we move on is we also ask students to bring used plastic bottles from their home. Well, where else did students bring bottles from? Right? Why do you mention home?
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
That is, I wonder why you asked students to bring used plastic bottles from home. Could students therefore bring plastic bottles from school? Students use a lot of plastic in school. They go to the tuck shop all day during school. Could they bring plastic bottles from school?
Oh, yes. I just forget it. So I should add the school in a sentence.
You might just say students brought in used plastic bottles. That's it. And they brought in plastic bottles that were used during the school day and from home. So you just say the sources of the plastic bottles. That's a nice detail. I mean, you can say whatever you want. Ultimately, if you're going to add this detail of where the bottles came from, the used plastic bottles, I just wonder why you just mentioned home. Like you could only bring bottles from home. Right? So again, audience awareness, people could easily conclude that. Do you get what I mean?
Yes.
So just a quick note is maybe it's important to have a topic sentence that uses the word problems, because we go from problems heading to problem in the topic sentence. And that's confusing for me because my expectation is there just might be one problem. Does that make sense?
But in the question, the question of part A, I think it writes problems.
Yes. And so
I should write more than one problem.
Yes, I agree. What I'm trying to say is the heading.
Oh, okay, I get it.
Heading and the topic sentence, if there is a topic sentence, are not the same. And it could be confusing. It's the same issue we would see here with, hold on a sec, your use of school and schools. It's a language problem here, but it would totally confuse a reader. Because you mentioned one school and then you mention more than one school, and the reader now and in the future would be really confused. So it's the same issue here, where we have to effectively orient the reader to the ideas. How do we do that? One, we have to check our work for language. So only use the word school, not schools. So people understand it's only one school. Second, we use topic sentences to orient the reader to what we're going to read about in the paragraph. Do you get what I mean?
Yes, I get it.
Okay. So that's how we have the reader understand. We look at our language, we look at our organization. Okay. So again, we need topic sentences. I'm going to write that down. You might want to write a topic sentences that develop the headings. So you have the heading problems, you have the heading solution, and you might want to write some kind of quick summary statement to actually use that word in a sentence. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I'm going to, I actually want to show you something. I need to show you something. Here we are, drive.google.com. I want to give you an example. This is something that we were doing in Form 2. Writing a feature article. And I'll show you the effective development of a heading. Okay, here we go. Let's go to, oh, here we are, feature article. Okay, let's go to Form 2. Writing a feature article. Super. All right. Okay, take a look at these two. So you see a heading here, and then you see a topic sentence that develops the heading. Okay, so I'm just going to throw that out there, that maybe an effective topic sentence for each section would further develop the heading. And that may mean using the same word. So be beautiful. Use simple clothes to make yourself more beautiful. Be different. Wearing different styles can make you more eye-catching. Be simple. Don't complicate, which is the same meaning as simple. Don't complicate outdoor activities with your footwear. So I think these feature articles have effective topic sentences. I'll do one more. Okay. So here we see bright, lighter, colorful, colors. bugs. Okay. Mosquito. Be gone. Repellent. So we have topic sentences that effectively orient the reader. Let me do one more. Next, where's mine? Okay. So in this sample writing as well, we see loose, loose. Mosquito, mosquito. Away or keep away, repellent. So I just throw that out there that you might want to write topic sentences to further develop your writing. Okay. Let's see. The main problem we observed was students' lack of enthusiasm. So that we only recycle minority of plastic bottles in school. Besides, the promotion work of the event is not prepared well. Also affected the result of event negatively. Okay, so I'm going to look at the activity did not receive much support from your schoolmates. So I'm going to look for details of the problem. I need details. Okay. So I'm going to show you words that need to be unpacked. So what does enthusiasm mean? Were students not happy enough? Were they not cheerful enough? What you mean?
Cheerful.
Okay. So what does minority mean here?
I think it's they just recycle a small quantity of plastic bottles.
Okay, can you be specific? Now we're on to something that's concrete, creative, and detailed. How many plastic bottles did you recycle?
Oh, so I should mention the amount of
How many
plastic
plastic
bottles.
bottles did you recycle?
I think it's 200.
200 plastic bottles. What's the problem with recycling 200 plastic bottles? That sounds like a great amount. That's a lot.
Sorry, 100.
Okay, 100 bottles. That's amazing. That's awesome. That's a great number. What's the problem, Remy?
How about 10?
Now I'm forcing you to think. 100's a great number. What's the problem?
Maybe our aim is to recycle about 500 plastic bottles, but
Yes.
yes.
Now you're demonstrating creativity and imagination, and you're developing the idea. Now you're forced to develop the idea. You're going from these very special and vague words to something very concrete. Actually, the main problem, Remy, was our club expected to recycle about 500 plastic bottles. And we had told the recycler that we would bring about 500 plastic bottles. Ultimately, we collected only 100 plastic bottles. And that was embarrassing. We didn't meet our expectation, and we didn't deliver on our promise to the recycler. That's a problem.
Yes.
And then you can develop the idea about the lack of student support. So the main problem was, well, we had expected students to recycle 500, or we had expected students to donate about 500 plastic bottles, and we had guaranteed our recycler we would bring 500 plastic bottles. However, students only brought in about 100 plastic bottles, and we didn't meet our aim, and we weren't able to deliver on our promise to the recycler. That's a problem. So these are important details that demonstrate creativity and imagination. So I'm going to write this down. You might want to develop the main problem. Develop each problem with details. Each problem with details. How many bottles were expected? How many bottles did you collect? What were the consequences? The negative consequences. So you might want to consider that. And let me just go back to the prompt as well. Writing prompt is hello. Okay. Uh-oh. Seems like this thing is broken. Let's see if. Uh-oh. I wonder if this crashed. Okay. Looks like we're back online. Okay. Now, besides, that suggests, that's great. You're going to add an additional problem. The promotion work of the event is not prepared well, also affected the result of event negatively. And this is where you can improve a lot because you don't actually say what the result was. What was the negative result? Why was it negative? All right, so I mean, there are many things that you can do to describe the problem. Ultimately, there should be some kind of expectation. We expected students to be so cheerful when they were recycling bottles, but we noticed they they looked pretty angry when they were recycling bottles. So the result was negative. You can make it quantitative. We expected 500 bottles. We only got 100. And then we lost a lot of face. We all felt bad. That's a negative consequence as well. Okay, so we actually have to write what the expectation was, what the result was, and why it's negative. Now I'll do a few language things. We observed, that's great. Okay, now remember, keep everything in the past tense.
Oh, recycled.
Yeah, okay. So that's one thing. Here, remember your punctuation. This refers to one student.
Oh. Okay, I change it.
All right. Now, something that's important, Remy, again, going back to details and coherence, is you mentioned the promotion work here, but you don't mention it here. What was the promotion work?
I thought it was not related to contents of the event because it happens before the event.
Sure. Then if that's the case, maybe here you could actually define what the promotion work is. So we actually don't know what the promotion work was, ultimately. The reader doesn't know. It wasn't prepared well, but we actually don't know what wasn't prepared well. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So maybe you should mention somewhere what the promotion work is. Because you mentioned the problem with it, but we actually don't know what it is. So let me write that down. You might want to mention somewhere what was the promotion work. Okay. Let's go to the last part. So to ensure the problems do not happen again. Now, these are very strong words, Remy. Really strong. So again, we wanted suggestions. We don't even have to listen to these suggestions. They're just suggestions. But here we have very strong language. You are using very strong language. Very strong. Your words are very strong. Like a guarantee. Your words are very strong. Firstly, we should so it's interesting, Remy, that you use solution in short, but then you use should, which is advice or suggestion. If you're going to continue with your strong words, you should use stronger modals like must, need to, have to.
Okay.
So there's an inconsistency in the tone. Do you get what I mean?
Yes.
If you're going to be strong, stay strong. If you're going to be a bit more cautious, be a bit more cautious. if you continue to use strong language, use strong modals like must, have to, need to. Write that down there. We should give more preparation time to students as they need it to collect the plastic bottles from home and school. Thus, we can collect more plastic bottles. Okay. So you might want to mention what preparation time is. What does that even mean? How much time do you have to prepare to collect a bottle? Don't you need like 10 seconds to pick up a bottle?
1 to 2 days.
Okay.
I mean, we need to give extra time for students. Maybe we should ask them earlier than we start the event.
Okay. When did you actually ask them? It's not clear here in the event or problems.
Oh. Maybe the day before the 1 day before the event.
Okay. So this goes back to the idea of promotion.
Yes.
You actually don't say the promotion work. And so now we have a solution, but we don't necessarily know what the problem was. Like, so for what problem is this the solution? It's the same thing with the plastic bottles. We can collect more plastic bottles. What was the problem? Right? This goes back to having this expectation that we wanted 500, we only got 100. So for Dr. Wu, I don't necessarily know for which problem preparation time addresses. So the more specific the problem, the more specific the solution to that problem. As it is, I'm not necessarily clear what problem this solution addresses. So I don't see preparation in the problem. I actually don't see that word in the problem, and I don't see it in the event. So more preparation time, that's weird because I don't know what the preparation time was. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That you're providing a solution, but I don't actually know what this solves. What was the problem with preparation time?
So I should write suggestions to solve the problems of students' lack of enthusiasm.
I don't know. That's up to you. Ultimately, enthusiasm, if I can, for me, I actually, it doesn't seem to make sense for me that intense, eager enjoyment, interest, or approval. I don't necessarily think there's a link between enthusiasm and recycling. it seems like there are actually two problems that you're trying to unpack. People's emotions and people's awareness. They're not the same, Remy. People may not recycle because they just don't know. People may not recycle because they're unhappy. That's different. So I again, I don't know. I don't know what you can do to make people happier. So they'll be happy doing it. But we do know that they may not have been aware of it because of the promotion period for the event. And maybe we should lengthen and intensify the promotion period. Do you kind of get what I'm saying?
Yes.
It seems like, it's hard for me to write this down. You actually want to describe two problems. One is about people's emotions, students' emotions, and then the other is about students' awareness. And so each solution should perhaps address one of those. So each solution should clearly address a specific problem. Or each suggestion, I'm not going to even be so harsh. Each suggestion should clearly address a specific problem. Right? So this, Remy, is what we call coherence and cohesion. Okay. Cohesion in most parts of the text is clear. Cohesion means stickiness. So the solution addresses and refers to a specific problem. It's clear. That's cohesion. It's clear one part of the text refers back to and addresses this part of the text.
Okay.
And you might want to use language like to address the problem of enthusiasm.
To address? Okay.
So that kind of language links what you're about to say with something else, right? If the problem was enthusiasm, to address the lack of enthusiasm, to address the problem of promotion work preparation, right? This kind of language introduces what you're about to say and it links it to something else in the text. Secondly, it is suggested that we should extend the event period. As we only held the event for 2 days, which means students might not be able to participate in time. Thirdly, without a doubt, you have, again, strong language here. You've got very strong language. More promotion work should be done to attract more students to take part. Okay. So thankfully, Remy, I actually see now one solution addresses one problem. This is the only suggestion that's clear to me that it's addressing one of the problems. Okay. So what I see here is two suggestions that don't necessarily address any specified problem. The preparation time and the extension of the event period, what problem does that address?
Maybe I should change the problems. The first problem into not enough preparation, not enough time for students to join the event.
Yeah, and you can also mention in the problem that students told you that there wasn't enough time over the day
Okay.
to drop off plastic bottles, that they had more bottles, they needed more time to drop them off. And as a result, we suggest, based on what the students said, that we'll extend the period, the collection period. So each suggestion should clearly address a specific problem. I only think your third suggestion addresses one of your stated problems. Which suggestion addresses students' lack of enthusiasm? So again, we can improve the coherence and cohesion of the text. I'll just do a final run through about the language. The tone is a little inconsistent. You were using we, that voice, but then you use this very informal passive voice, and then you use we. So this is really confusing for me. You mix the strong language and the weak language. Should and without a doubt. But then there's a mixture of active and passive voice. It is suggested and we. You use passive voice to introduce active voice. So I'm going to write this down. I think this is important for you. Be consistent in your tone. I'm going to write this down over here. Be consistent in your tone. If you are going to use strong words, use strong words in the entirety. Use strong words all the time. If you are going to use passive voice, use passive voice all the time. Okay, do you get what I mean?
Yes.
So we need to be very consistent in the tone. And that goes with the appropriateness of a genre and text type. Okay. Do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. Now, question. Do you want to meet next week? And two, if we meet next week, do you want to review a revised part A, or do you want to review your part B?
Part B.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's go over part B next time. I don't want to actually grade part A, what we just did today. I think you have an idea of how I would grade it, and I think you have a lot of suggestions. So I'm just going to say one last thing. You actually look at my language that I'm using. Look at Dr. Wu's language. These are actually suggestions. I use might and I use should. Might is even weaker than should. I don't know if you'll listen at all to me. I do not use any strong language with you. I use would. Okay, so I don't use strong language with you at all in writing up these comments. And so my tone is very consistent in providing suggestions for you. And I think maybe that can help you. The way I write my comments and suggestions might be useful for you too.
Yes, I will note that down.
I'm going to
Note down it.
I'm going to send this annotated thing to you. So maybe we can set up a time to meet next week. When is your writing exam?
Writing exam is 3rd of April.
Okay, so we still have some time to go over. And let me go over 6A. Okay. And what is today? I guess today is day 3. So day 6, do you want to meet at 9:30? Would that be okay?
Yes.
Okay, so let's meet Monday, 9:30, and we'll go over part B. Okay, I'm going to write that down now. I'm going to stop.